Good morning. Today we are talking about Frank and Jessie James. That's Frank on the left, Jessie James on the right. Handsome young men. Here's another shot of the men. As many of you all know, Frank and Jessie James are very famous as being outlaws. You can find extensive knowledge and information on Encyclopedia Britannica. You can find information on multiple sites online. Both of these men were born September the 5th, 1847, and then January the 10th, 1843. So they're only about 3-4 years apart. They both were born in Missouri, Centerville, Missouri. Now, both of the brothers were among the most notorious outlaws in the American West, engaging in robberies that came to typify the hazards of the 19th century frontier as it was portrayed in the motion picture westerns. Now, as I said, they both grew up on the Missouri farm. Jessie and Frank shared their family's sympathy with the Southern cause when the American Civil War broke out in 1861. Frank joined William C. Quantrill's Confederate guerrillas, becoming friends with Cole Younger, a fellow member. Now, Jessie followed suit by joining Bloody Bill Anderson's guerrilla band. And at the end of the war, the band surrendered, but Jessie was reportedly shot and severely wounded by the Federal soldiers while under a flag of truce. He and Frank, joined by 8 other men, then began their outlaw career by robbing a bank in Liberty, Missouri on February the 13th, 1866. Now, during this same year, Cole Younger joined the gang with the other Younger brothers, following his lead one by one during the next few years. The James gang robbed banks from Iowa to Alabama and Texas and began holding up trains in 1873. Now, the bandits also preyed upon stagecoaches, stores, and individuals. Here you can see a picture of some of their family. And, you know, they did create and commit crimes in numerous states, as I said. And they did make their marks on Alabama in certain places. Now, their legends have it that the brothers robbed numerous banks in Alabama. But really and truthfully, they didn't rob the bank. A lot of legends say that Jessie James robbed the Huntsville First National Bank of 1876 for $10,000. That robbery was never committed, nor was one attempted, but the legend always continues. The closest Jessie James ever came to robbing a bank in Huntsville was when he robbed the Huntington Bank in Huntington, Tennessee in 1875. While Jessie did not rob any banks in the state of Alabama, it is rumored that he did hide out in various locations in the northern part of the state. A lot of the hideout locations have been around the Springville and Gadsden area in Etowah County, near Gunnersville in Marshall County, and Mentone in DeKalb County. Frank also never robbed a bank in Huntsville, but he came a lot closer than Jessie did, at least according to the state's judicial system. Now, in 1881, a federal paymaster by the name of Alexander Smith was traveling from Florence to Muscle Shoals, transporting the payroll for men digging a canal in Muscle Shoals for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. This payroll consisted of $4,371 in cash, $500 in gold, and $419.18 in silver. Smith was robbed by 3 masked men who may not have been caught if outlaw Bill Ryan had not bragged about a robbery in the bar one night. He was arrested and taken to jail in Nashville, where he implicated Frank James of the robbery. Now, he was not arrested, however. In 1882, though, Frank James did go to the Jefferson City, Missouri for a meeting with Governor Thomas Crittenden, saying, "I have been hunted for 21 years, have literally lived in the saddle, and have never known a day of perfect peace. It has been long and anxious and inexorable." So he later would not face his trial in Missouri. He did, they just couldn't find enough information to pin him for any of the things that they tried to try him on. So he did get acquitted on everything. But throughout this long career and afterward, These exploits of these two men were seized upon by writers who exaggerated and romanticized their deeds to meet the demands of the Eastern readers for bloody Western tales of what they did. Now, to the Missouri Ozark people, Jessie emerged as a romantic figure, hounded into a life of crime by authorities who never forgave his allegiance to the South. Jessie and Frank did, in fact, always seek to justify their banditry on grounds of persecution. Now, on September the 7th, 1876, the James gang was nearly destroyed while trying to rob the First National Bank of Northfield, Minnesota. Of the 8 bandits, only the Jesse James brothers escaped death or capture. Now, during this time, would-be assassin Robert Ford, whose brother Charles was a member of a new gang. That immunity that took place, as I told you, when Frank went and talked to Mr. Crichton, it took form of the gubernatorial pardon after Ford was convicted and sentenced to death for killing Jesse James. In the event, Jesse, living at St. Joseph under the pseudonym of Thomas Howard, was unarmed and in his home, adjusting a picture frame on the wall containing the words "In God We Trust" in cross-stitch, when he was shot in the back of the head and instantly killed by Robert Ford. Later, Ford would be popularly characterized as a Judas, a judgment that may have derived largely from his portrayal as a dirty little coward in the Ballad of Jesse James. It was a traditional folk song, probably written in the immediate aftermath of James's death, possibly by the man Billy Gashad. That song, recorded through the years by such performers as Vernon Dalhart, Pete Seeger, and Bruce Springsteen, also likely has much to do with the tradition that cast Jesse as an American Robin Hood. Ford himself was shot in Creede, Colorado in 1892 by Edward Cape Hart O'Kelly, who was viewed by some as Jesse's avenger and whose life sentence for Ford's murder was commuted in 1901 by Colorado Governor James Bradley Orman in response to pleas for executive clemency from at least 2 strident advocates for O'Kelly. And like I said, Frank, a few months after his brother's death, gave himself up. Like I said, they tried to try him for several different murders in Missouri. They couldn't find him guilty. They tried him for robbery in Alabama. They found him not guilty. They finally tried him for armed robbery in Missouri, and again he was released. A free man, he retired to a quiet life on his family farm, and he died in 1915 in the room that he was born in, actually. Here's another shot. That's Frank James on the right, as he's an older man. And here we see where Frank James has allowed people to come on the property and see where he used to live, where he still lives and resided at the time. He charged 50 cents a person for them to be able to see where him and his brother grew up. Just pretty interesting. There's lots of rumors that Jesse and Frank James possibly tried to rob a stagecoach here in Springville, but the train went a different direction, so they weren't able to rob the train here in Springville. I do not know that any of that is accurate. It's just rumors that I've heard here in Springville. I also heard that they shot somebody they were staying at a house here in Springville and got into an altercation with somebody and shot them in the back. And that they also stayed at the Harrington Hotel, that's where the Presbyterian Church is now. I don't know that that's true either. I don't know if there's any documentation for some of the old records. I do know that that hotel did burn down. Here's a picture of some of their descendants. Henry Isaac James, Thomas James, Jeremiah, Almon Ray, Matilda and Pearl, and Daisy Elizabeth James. Now, like I told you, Frank James spent the last of his 30 years doing various jobs. He was a shoe salesman, a ticket taker at a theater, a telegraph operator, and then of course, like I told you, where he was showing and giving tours of the James farm. That's how he supported himself before he passed away in February the 18th, 1915, at the age of 71. So if you want to try to find more information, just do your research and look online. I did contact the Preservation Society to see if there was any actual evidence of anything coming through Springville, and they didn't have anything on file on Frank or Jessie James. But if anybody has heard or seen anything, y'all feel free to comment on this post and on the video feed on YouTube if you want to, and let me know. I would love to hear the stories, whether they're rumor, folklore, legend. It would just be really neat to hear. Or if somebody actually has photographs where they were here in Springville, possibly, or in Gadsden, Etowah County, that would be really cool to see if anybody had any old photos or footage. All right, I hope y'all have enjoyed these notorious outlaws of Alabama. I've got one or two more to share with you, and then we'll move on to something else that we're talking about. Talk to you guys later.